I turned on the recording.
Go for it. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, this is probably it today, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry I did the definition dump yesterday evening. But
yeah, I didn't realize, like, I saw Timothy's complaint that there's too many in there. I was like, oh no, I added 3. And then I opened the board again.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I don't believe that words only make sense in families.
They do, but it still makes sense to prioritize on the fundamental building blocks first. And for me right now, and also after having talked a bit with you, Mike Antoine, in chat, and with Timothy after, it's trying to define intent for me would have priority, if you would ask me.
Right, and I one reason I insist is I think my thought is the same as intent, and I want to nail that. But that means explicit reference to a triangle, the semiotic triangle.
Maybe, depending on the definition. Do you actually, out of all the definitions you added, did you add intent?
I removed 2. I removed declarative sentence and declarative thought, but I think everything else kind of goes together. We can postpone formal statement too, maybe.
I'm a bit confused because you claim to be aligned with the current definition of declarative sentence. What is your reason for adding a new definition?
I did not redefine declarative sentence. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, no. So maybe I'll remove my alignment here because I'm not sure anymore.
Yes, that seems like what you're implying.
Yeah, correct.
And if someone would be willing to, I don't know if it'd be useful to share a screen, but while we're talking about the list, that might be good.
I have quite a lot of shit open.
I could do it, I guess.
And just for the record, I find the Trello backgrounds distracting.
Yeah, we can change it. No problem. There we go.
Okay, you did it. Good.
Okay. So, yeah, I agree. This is too long. That's described here. The whole point is that we can talk about all of these at the same time. I think this is too much for all of us to read through, also because it was added fairly late. So I think the first thing we need to do is agree on what to try to align on right now.
I like the idea of figuring out intent and thought, seeing if they're the same and if we can align on those.
Timothy?
Fine with me.
Sorry?
That's fine. That works for me.
Mike Antoine?
Yep.
So what I will do then is this. Unfortunately, there's no quick way to do this in...
No, don't remove symbol thought. Thought is the one that you're relying on.
Sorry, yeah.
And don't remove, you can remove topic.
I'll read through thought in a bit, and then I'll add the ones that are relevant. Let's see what you did. So the good thing about my definition of intent is there's no dependency here, as you can see on any other one, so I don't need to drag in more stuff. You drag in symbol.
And I'm dragging in referent, because those are inseparable.
You don't refer to it.
I do. I do, because it's in the triangle of reference.
Okay, but I mean, you don't, in the definition of thought here, you don't refer to.
No, not from thought, but I could. It's no, they go together, please. I cannot reduce more than that.
Okay, let's start with this then. Maybe you can give a short presentation of what you wrote here.
Yes. Well, let's start with the triangle of reference. Click that link. It's a Wikipedia link. This is basic semiotics. Peirce worked off that, so this is kind of older than Peirce, but I'm still referring to Peircean semantics sometimes, but I think this is good enough. There's a symbol, there's a thought, something happening in the brain, and there's something out there, what we're speaking about. There's thinking about the thing, there's the thing, and there's the word for the thing. And so the symbol symbolizes the thought. The thought refers to the referent, the thing, and the symbol stands for the thing. So those three are
between the difference of thought and referent right now.
Okay, well, if I'm speaking about Felix the cat itself is the referent. My idea of Felix is the thought, and the words Felix the cat is the symbol. But the cat exists outside of my brain, presumably, so that's the referent. But the cat also exists in my brain since I thought about it, and that's the thought.
Okay, yeah.
And I said Felix the cat.
and when we're specifically talking about intent, which of these three is it that you're referring to?
I think that intent is the thought, and that's what I want to check with you.
Yes, I think that's the same for me. And I have the impression that Timothy might be indicating that referent is intent, but maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, no, a referent is what we want the claim to be about. And I guess we all agree that's impossible. But I don't, the problem I have with intent is within the mind of one person. And what really matters, and we generally think of intent as the one that intended something to be understood, right? So generally the person that created the claim. Or the statement or whatever. The thing is, that's irrelevant, in my opinion, in the canonical debate. What is important is the interpretations, the realm of interpretation. So when we're talking about intent, it's not, is thought, it is thought, but the difference is intent is like the thought in the mind of the creator. And what I care about is the interpretation, which is the thought in the mind of the observer.
Yeah,
Both.
so you can
Both
refer
creator
to
and
the same
observer.
symbols with different thoughts, right? Pretty much, according to this triangle here.
Right.
Yeah, I agree totally. Intent is more about the emitter, and in a communication process, there's the thought of the emitter and the thought of the receiver, and they're both relevant, and they're correlated but not identical. And that's, we're not transmitting thoughts, we're transmitting symbols. At some point you said we're trying to get at the referent. I'm not sure that's the case.
I only say that, but what I mean is really what we're trying to get at is identical thoughts.
Yes, as much as possible.
Yeah,
and
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have symbol thought reference kind of that. And my next claim, and I think we're close, we're aligned on intent and thought. And I don't know how you feel, Stephen, about saying intent is too restrictive because it's the emitters as opposed to emitter or receptor.
What do you mean restrictive to what?
Intent is restrictive because it connotes the emitter only. And I would say let's use thought, and then maybe in thought let's add a note about if it's the emitters, then it's the intent, and if it's the receivers, maybe we want another name for that.
But I don't think I would rather even eliminate the emitter from the equation.
Okay, I don't.
Because
okay.
Yeah, I think that what's important is everybody's on equal footing when it comes to the symbol gets out there, right, as a claim, and it may get disambiguated.
Within this triangle, what I've been arguing for all this time in the past meetings is that the symbol is the only thing that you might be able to agree on, and that's what I call statements.
That's a statement.
Statement is a special case of symbol.
Yes.
Right.
When I introduced my distinction between statement and symbol, similar to this triangle, I said, well, a claim and statement. Then a claim lives here. A claim has a certain thought behind it of what that symbol represents. I think what you're saying, Timothy, which we also all agree on, is we're trying to have those claims refer to the same referent. And that's the process of trying to be canonical. Yes, Marc-Antoine?
I'm not working so much on reference, though it is relevant, and we'll see where much downstream. I have something to say about when is the referent relevant. But I think we're trying to agree on thoughts. Like sometimes there's no referent. If we speak about unicorns, there's no referent, but there's and there's a bit of confusion in that the idea of the unicorn can be a referent to a discourse about unicorns. Like sometimes, and this is tricky, thoughts or symbols can be reference. Like you can speak about symbols, you can speak about thoughts. Mm-hmm. So they play a dual role, and that's confusing as all hell, but reality can be confusing. But let's forget that. We think there's a reference, sometimes it's out there as
but we think there's a referent or reference because the thing that's shown right now equates thought with reference, apparently.
Yes, I said the referent sometimes is a physical being, like Felix the cat. Sometimes is a imaginary being. Hi, Joshua. Mm-hmm. Like unicorns. Sometimes it's a mental being, like the number 4. Now, number 4, is it a thought or is it a reference? That's depending if you're a Platonician or a formalist in philosophy of mathematics, but let's see, it can be a referent as well as a thought. It can be a symbol. I can, the word, and I give that as an example, the word long is shorter than the word short. Well, here I'm speaking about long and short as symbols, but I'm also speaking about them, so they're referenced in that sentence, just to add to the confusion. So that's confusing. But anyway, that's all a whole conversation. But I think we still have, I think I'm more interested in agreement on reference or thought than agreement on referent, because the reference is a proxy for the referent. But that's all another story. To your other point, Tim, symbol. There's 2 ways to consider the symbol: in context or abstractly out of context. In context, somebody said this. And when we try to discern the thought of what does the symbol mean, right? There's 2 very different operations. One is, what did the emitter mean? And that is, it applies to the symbol in context. I call that a quote, by the way, and I have a card for quote, which is the symbol in context. And one is, what does symbol mean in abstracto? And that is probably the sum of all interpretations of all receptors, for all I know.
That's very much what I've been arguing for, that we need, because that's the reality of it. If you model something in a system, that you model a symbol and people may interpret it differently.
Yeah.
That's my statement, basically.
Well, isn't formalization taking the symbol and enhancing it so that it's clearer?
It can be clearer, right? But the basic statement right now, as we talked about, only as a declarative sentence. But yes, we can add other things like definitions and whatever. But these are still some shared symbols you're pointing to.
And this is, and let me now introduce topics. The topic is, we don't have access to thoughts. We don't always have access to reference, but because they sometimes don't exist or are abstract, but we often do. But that's not the point. We don't always have access to thought. We never have access to thoughts. So what we need to do is to have a proxy for the thought. And this is what I call the topic. And it's, in a way, it's a representative of the equivalence class of symbols by symbol equivalence.
Who's taught Marc-Antoine? Because that's always my concern. Like, I'm fine with having a representation of it, but how can you decouple thought from an individual or a source or anything else? That's basically what I try to argue for in my updated definition of claim. Like,
Okay.
You can have one symbol, different people can have different thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Like when you want to somehow represent that thought, which thought are you talking about?
What you do, and okay, let me go back. We have a process of saying this thought, this symbol, and that's something Joshua described earlier. And, saying, oh, I think this means the same as this, or I meant this by this, or all this process of negotiating. It's done through symbols because that's what we have. We don't have thoughts, we have symbols. So it's done through symbols, but it defines an equivalence class on the symbols. And that equivalence class is as close as we can come to the thoughts and is what I call a topic.
Okay, maybe you need to elaborate what you mean by defining an equivalence class, but it sounds a bit similar like, how can I switch tabs? It sounds a bit similar to this is in the way. However, it's only by verifying alignment on other statements they may uncover with more certainty, but never fully they share the same intent when expressing agreement with a statement. It's through the process basically of checking agreement on multiple other symbols that you might hope to align, that you might have some more certainty that you actually have the same thought.
Exactly.
So I think,
yeah. Except I'm doing it at the level of symbols in general and not just declarative statements. And then
that's what I call my symbol in general is my statements. We can go from there. I think that the reason why I call it a statement is because I would argue that, and I had the same discussion with Timothy yesterday, I would argue that any symbol can be expressed as a declarative sentence at the very least. Any meaningful symbol we want to talk about in technology of argumentation, I would say can be expressed as a declarative sentence, because that's the nature of argumentation. You can claim a symbol is true or false. If you can't claim that symbol is true or false, why have it in the system?
Well, okay, but at some point it becomes prohibitive. Like if I have a scatter plot, it can be expressed as a sentence, but it's prohibitive to do so. But I can say, is that scatter plot accurate or not? It's a symbol. It's a symbol.
No, it's a statement about something else, and then we can.
I'm saying the plot itself is a symbol.
Yeah, that's true. But you said the data represented in the scatter plot is accurate. That's a declarative sentence, which might point to something else that's not a declarative sentence, but the claim you're making, which you want to input, is still a declarative sentence. What
I'm saying is that claim is implicit. When I present the plot, I'm emitting a symbol. I'm doing a communication act. Saying it's accurate is an implicit further communication act. The way that any sentence can, when I say this, I'm implicitly saying I'm honest about it.
How will a graph without any statement made about that graph live in an argument graph, according to you?
It's okay. The digital documents in general, right, have this strange, not strange, but they're always both reference and symbols. They're reference because they're objects and we can talk about them, we can have metadata about them. And they're symbols because they stand for a lot of thought. And that's true of all digital documents, graph, text, whatever.
Yeah, but we're not there to map any random thoughts related to anything. We're trying to map argumentation. So my point is...
we're at the level of definitions now. I'm trying to define what's a symbol, what's a reference.
Yeah, okay.
What we'll model is something else.
Yeah, but you're trying to argue why you want to have the definition of symbol. I'm trying to argue I don't think that's a useful definition to talk about in context of an
okay.
Argumentation. a statement is a more essential basic building block to talk about than a symbol, which is even more generic. We can always talk about symbols later, but the common denominator is that you construct an argument graph out of declarative sentences, basically.
When you say statement, is that does that include entities? Like Felix the cat, is that a statement for you?
No, you can read the definition.
Okay, so no. For me, the reason I insist on defining symbol generically is I want to say symbols can apply to entities, claims, or arguments. They're all symbols. They all have this triangle going on. They all have thought and.
I'm disagreeing with you there. I'm saying I'm disagreeing with the need to talk about that, and we've done that for a long time.
Yeah, and we're still, and I'm saying it's the atom. Well, I think one reason the discussion has been so difficult is we speak about molecules before speaking about atoms, and statements are molecules.
Yeah, no disagreement there. But an argument graph is built out of molecules, not out of atoms.
I'm saying it's built out of atoms.
Yeah, it can be further broken down into atoms, but what we're primarily interested in, what the goal is of what we're doing here, is talking about molecules, not about atoms, to use that analogy.
Okay, and what I'm saying is we cannot speak about molecules without speaking about atoms. It's futile.
You know, on the side of topic or symbol, you know, I don't know if we need the word symbol. I don't know if topic is the term I want to use, but we know that I have the concept of context, which is definitions, right? So there's something there that needs to be talked about in terms of the design for the disambiguation part, right? Which I think is part of what the symbol talk is getting at, and topics, obviously. Mm-hmm. As for the chart, this is what I called a reference in my model, right? Which is that, you know, any external piece of evidence or document or something like that you want to refer to and debate and use to prove something is going to be an external entity that matches in this realm of what we're talking about, symbol or topic. You know, I call it a reference, but it would be a link to something out there that's a chart or whatever that you can make claims about. And that is not a statement. That is something that will be referenced in the statement, right? This chart.
I call it an entity.
Yeah, an entity, or I call it, yeah. So this chart shows that this thing is happening, right? So you're referring to it in the statement. On that triangle, you know, it's referent and symbol, as you said.
Well, sometimes it's sometimes a referent is a symbol, sometimes it isn't. Like a chart would be both a referent and a symbol. The cat, or me, or you, we're not symbols, we're references.
I mean, I think what I'm calling a reference, which is a URL to something, is probably always both.
Okay, that's interesting. Anything digital is always, I mean, anything can be a referent because anything can be talked about. Nothing cannot be a referent. URLs are formal symbols, but they're symbols, just like words. There's something that refers to something. So, hi, Jean. Yeah, here we have the intent. The notion of intent is here, by the way. I like that we have an external Wikipedia link for this. The URLs, and this is something I want to get into. There's this whole work of negotiating equivalence classes, right? About any thought or any symbol thought relationship. We're using symbols and equivalence class and symbols to try to corner what the thought is. And that's a negotiation. And it's, you know, oh, I think I meant this, or I think this is the same as that, and blah, blah, blah. The beauty is if you use formal language as one of the symbols, because formal language is no more a symbol than anything else. The beauty of formal language, if it's done well, is that equivalence class of formal language can be automated. So you can, if you've said this thought, this symbol is in this equivalence class with this formal symbol, then the formal symbol becomes an anchor, or the equivalence class of the formal symbol, to be more accurate, becomes an anchor for determining whether a set of sentences or phrases refer to the same thought or not, because you have at least the formal equivalence or non-equivalence of the formal symbol as an anchor.
What is a formal symbol for you?
There's a card for it.
Yeah, but so that
it's something. It's a formal. There's a formal system, and there's many formal systems. We may have to pick one, or we may allow many. But I'm saying the requirement I have on formal symbol is precisely that there's a deterministic equivalence relation with a unique representative, so that we can use it as an anchor for. Now, the anchor is modulo. Like I'll give an example. If I say the table is blue formally, can be for.
Whatever happened to progressive formalization here? Because I thought we agreed that that's a necessary part.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can we agree that if you say the table is blue, yes, that is a statement? Can we agree that yes, you can make it more formalized and you can add formalized symbols and topics and whatever else? Didn't we in the past agree that we were going to postpone it until later? We're first going to try to agree on what a statement is and what a claim is? Fair
enough. I was just pointing out that when it's done, it helps the process of defining equivalence classes, but I can postpone that.
Yeah, but you don't need to go into so much detail. I fully agree there. The reality of it is, though, that when people first arrive and start using the system, they'll use natural plain language using declarative sentences to both search for existing, very well-defined formalisms.
And this is why we'll use statement relations, saying this statement is equivalent to that one, this statement, oh, I meant that one, as a proxy to define the equivalence classes.
Exactly, but they still enter using plain, natural language.
Yes.
So can we start from there?
I am starting from there. That's simple thought intent. That's a triangle. That's my starting point.
That's why we added as a first thing to align on declarative sentence, right? For that reason, that was the first thing we aligned on. So now what is the reason? What is the reason for adding new definitions for declarative sentence?
Because not all symbols, not all thoughts are declarative. An entity is not declarative. An entity is just a reference to an entity. It's not a declarative.
Why, if you agree that we don't need to, at this point in time, start formalizing the declarative sentence just yet? At this point, why?
That doesn't mean I don't. That does not entail that identifying entities is useless.
It's not useless, but that's not what we're prioritizing right now. I can be fully agreed and aligned that there's entities present within declarative sentences that I refer to.
Yeah.
But
okay, we can do the work of the triangle 5 times for, or well, 3 times at least, for entity, for declarative sentence, for argument, for question, for something else that may come up. We can do the exact same work 5 times, or we can do it abstractly. If you insist on doing it 5 times, let's do it 5 times. I'm sick of that conversation. But it's we can do it once and get it over with.
That's maybe, and for that very reason, I suggested to first start talking about intent, because my claim is still you cannot model intent at all. It's impossible to model intent. So we're never going to model that. We're never going to do the triangle 10 different times. The point is, all we really have are symbols. All the best approximation we can have of intent is to trace back the intent to whoever said it. So
which is exactly what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you there.
That's linking symbols to places where symbols are used.
Absolutely right. I'm saying
that's the approximation of intent we can have, right?
Yes.
Isn't that sufficient for now?
It's exactly what I'm saying with my triad. Well, with the cards. I'm saying it many cards because all the components of the conversation make sense. It's the thought, symbol, topic, and if you look. Oh, here was referent, by the way. Symbol.
So if a quote is any symbol, a quote can also be I don't even know.
A quote is symbol when considered in the context of a particular communication act by a given person.
No, but I mean, according to your definition here, a quote is also just a word. It can be considered. Like in this text here, it can be description. It can be it can be the letter W within this thing here, right? It can be anything.
Well, W is pushing it, but certainly the description is certainly good point. Maybe I should make a distinction between W and.
I mean, that's literally what you're saying here.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that distinction that's that the minimum unit we're interested in is declarative sentences.
There I disagree.
Yeah, but I just gave you some reasons why if you start deriving like.
No, I'm willing to go down to the unit of a word and say it doesn't go below the unit of a word. But though I would even say...
But you said symbols are also images. So then you're excluding images all of a sudden.
No, I'm including images. Anything that refers to a thought, and that certainly includes words.
Okay, but I'm still totally puzzled why we're talking about this. I mean, I do know because
we're talking about it because even though we pretend we're just talking about definitions, we're talking about modeling. This happens every time. And the reason that declarative sentences and statements and intents or whatever need to be built out of symbols, intent isn't built out well.
I don't plan
is because.
My whole point.
No, but I believe the reason where it's necessary in Marc-Antoine's mind to start it with atoms is because in the model, he would like these other things to be built out of those atomic models, right?
Eventually,
whereas we don't see that as being, right.
Not as a starting point.
Yeah.
When formalized.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is both exist. The atoms exist and the molecules exist as well. Argumentation is about the molecules.
Yes, but no. Wrong. We can argue about atoms. We can argue about is climate change the same as global warming? That's an argument about the atoms. That's an argument about the entities. It's not an argument about the declarative statement.
Climate change is the same as global warming. What is this?
This is an argument about the equivalence of symbols. It's a statement. It's a statement relation, by the way. I have statement relation as a fundamental card.
But is or isn't it a declarative sentence?
I had said I excluded definitions from declarative sentences.
It's literally in your as much as definition, defining things.
And I said I was not aligned with that because I wanted to exclude definitions, remember?
So what is wrong with definitions there? Like, I mean, that at least seems minimally constructive.
Okay, and that can be argued. I mean, that's a question of definition, and definitions have to fit somewhere. I wanted to distinguish empirical from analytic truth, basically. It's saying definition is something we have to agree on as a language convention versus declarative sentence is something we have to agree on as happening in the world. Like how we carve out the world in the words is convention. How we...
But they're not disjoint then, right? Like you could have a declarative sentence that, like you're sort of talking about a definition in a broader sense than a declarative sentence.
Okay, we have a class of, dare I use the word claim? Okay, we have something which I'm breaking up in two parts. Where we place the words remains to be seen, but there are statements about the world and there are statements about the words. And I would prefer to use declarative statement only for statement about the world. This is a matter of how we carve out the words precisely. So it's a definition argument.
You'd prefer to use declarative sentence for only things? I missed that last part.
Only for statements about the world as opposed to statements about words.
But then what is the text literal that well which serves the purpose here, that makes a statement?
The example of climate change is the same as global warming. Well, this is actually a statement link. It's a statement relation. I call it a statement relation. But it is a statement.
Why do you always talk about these things as if they cannot be both? Can this not be both a declarative sentence and a statement relation? That's progressive formalization. So you
that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. What I'm talking about is I tend to think of the distinction between statements which are definitions versus statements which are claims about the world. It's a distinction, and I call only the latter declarative statements. You call the whole thing declarative sentence. We need a word for the whole thing. We need a word for each of them.
Exactly. Okay. We just need a word for the less narrow term, right?
Yes, I agree. I would call them...
It's like we're calling that a declarative sentence, unless you're proposing a different word for that.
I'm proposing statement, for what it's worth.
Yeah, okay. The original reason why declarative sentence was first entered was with a very old argument that with Bentley, that he might have different ways of saying the exact same thing, and that became the relation between what I call statement, and I think you agreed there. In the declarative sentences, if you look at the definition, you have examples here. The earth is flat, la terre plate, like multiple languages being one of them, as well as like obvious negations. The earth is flat and the earth is not flat is false. These are two declarative sentences actually making the same linguistic statement, if you will.
Well, I think this misses the distinction, and you know, this is about words, and I don't want to be hard-headed about words. I mean, if we decide that declarative sentence is the generic, but we agree we have two classes and a generic above them, right? Which one receives which word is not a hill I want to die on, definitely. But I think we agree on the concept that there's two kinds of, I call them statements. I call statement the generic, declarative statement the ones about the world, and definitions the one about the words. That's my...
But both are statements, you're saying?
Yeah.
So can we for now only talk about what statements are or not, and then later talk about the more specific cases?
Sure.
Because that's what we're trying to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
So again, what's wrong with the basic building block that all of this points to, being declarative sentences?
What's wrong?
Why is it a problem that a declarative sentence can be a definition?
Because if a declarative sentence includes definition, then it's the same as statement. And why do we have two words? And it makes thinking. I want to be able to think about definitions
No, I mean,
and non-definitions separately.
To use your term, declarative sentence is an atom, and it's going to be used to build either a definition or a statement. Or a claim.
It sounds like we agree on the concept. It's just you in your language, Marc-Antoine, you're calling that a statement, but we seem to have agreed, unless I'm misunderstanding, on the concept of a declarative sentence. We're only pending on moving forward with that as the label, right? And actually moving forward.
Okay, so let declarative sentence be the generic. I don't care. Then we need something about declarative sentence about the world. What name do you propose for that, as opposed to definitions?
I don't agree. We need to align on that now. I think that's my important thing to align on. Like,
well, I need to be able to name those
what's
things.
the link between claims and intents?
Okay, so I'll use the paraphrase, declarative sentence about the world for now. I need a name for it. It's something I refer to.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, I'll use the paraphrase. It's cool. and so are we saying that statement and declarative sentence are synonyms now? Because that's what I got out of that conversation. I propose statement.
No,
We're only making a
reason
claim.
why it's not the same here.
Okay, so explain to me the difference, because I got lost in definitions.
But that's aligning on a new term. Like, have we fully aligned on declarative sentence being the two words that we're using to refer to this concept and will not revisit?
The generic.
Yes.
I'm not happy with it, but I'll use it. Yes. So let's put a note that includes declarative sentences about the world and definitions. If we're making it the generic, let's be explicit about it being the generic. Yeah.
But I mean, that's what the examples do. So the whole
there's no definition in there.
If you read this thing again, it explains the process. The point is that the definitions are concise-ish. It's basically by evaluating them against, this becomes a definition, becomes an operational definition. If you agree with all of these, you can check off your name here. If you don't agree with all of these, it means we're not aligned.
Yeah.
That's just defining things. New York's a city in the USA. My dog is sick.
Okay, there are definitions. Fair enough. I disagreed because I was not going to use that word for that thing. But now that I've bought it, it's okay. I'm aligned.
Well, the reason we picked that word was because it overlines almost 100% with a term that's used in linguistics. So I was quite happy when Jamie, I think, pointed to that, because why reintroduce new terminology, right?
Well, and that's why I'm introducing thought referent and symbol.
Yeah, but that's a different discussion than this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the linguistics term was a bit unclear whether it included definition, but okay. Let's see it. That's it. That's it.
So then what we tried to do last time was to go from there to try to define claims, and then we ended up in a whole lengthy discussion last meeting about intents, if you remember that.
Yes.
And about canonicality and all that stuff. And that for that reason we started talking just now about this triangle, right?
Yes.
To trace back a bit. So
yes.
If the symbol is right now a declarative sentence.
No.
Why
declarative symbol, because declarative symbol is a very, it's a kind of symbol.
Yes, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Okay, good. Okay, if the declarative symbol is a kind of symbol.
Whenever I say something is something, it's not like that's the only thing it is, and it doesn't. That language doesn't work that way, right? It's not the exact same thing.
I think you switched the order. I think you
You
said
switched the
well,
order,
it's
and that's why
declarative
I
sentence.
protested.
Yeah, it's declarative sentence is a symbol. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I would not have protested that.
So the reason why Joshua mentioned correctly that we need to start talking about intent more is this triangle, right? So
Yes.
intent, I think we seem to align, is about the thought thing. Now, can we try to agree on what intent or thought is? We can rename intent to thought, by the way. That might make sense given this triangle.
So, yeah, my like I was saying before, my problem with intent is it's a concept that doesn't match what I think should be in the canonical debate, which is someone trying to do something, right? An intent is someone trying to express something. And
It's the emitter's thought as opposed to the thoughts including the recipient's thought.
And so like I would suggest as an alternative term, interpretation.
And that's the recipient's thought and not the emitter's thought.
No, Timothy, let's be clear.
Exactly.
You just to want to talk about a different thing that we're trying to define, or you're trying to suggest a different word, or you're trying to, because
I'm trying to suggest a different word. The reason we're discussing intent is because it's one of the words being used to define claim, right?
So can we refer to thought, given that we seem to be aligned? We can even refer to the what is the triangle called?
To the I have the triangle of reference or semiotic triangle, and I have my thought card. It's
so
got,
thought.
It refers to the card. It refers to the triangle.
The triangle thought in the triangle is too atomic, too granular for what we want with, or what we were going for with intent.
No, but I think what you're saying is that you want to have something different, which is not intent, and we're potentially disagreeing.
And I'm saying we agree thought is inaccessible, but we still need to talk about it. We cannot put it in the model.
Exactly.
We'll put something else in the model as a proxy for thought, and that's what I'm calling topic.
For now, I'm going to add it because I think that Mark Antoine did convince me it is very similar.
Why not start from my thought? Or let's compare the thought cards and merge them. Let's try to merge them because I think that's
what we're doing. So what you basically do whenever we're trying to align on the definition is we add them here. Now we have two. For some reason, your definition relies on symbol. So I would still, let's see, why does it rely on symbol? A thought is what we had in mind.
Because they're interdependent.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But I would leave symbol undefined, basically. It's basically anything, right? I mean,
I've been like listening. I've been juggling a number of things and listening in where I can. I'll just throw in my mind about intent as I see it as almost something to consider in the moderation layer. Like you can have a number of claims, and intent is something to consider when deciding whether or not should these two claims be merged. Should this conversation be forked into multiple claims? But a claim at the same time, is not always possible to get to the intent, and the poster's intent doesn't always matter. So in my head, it's not vitally, intent isn't the way I think about the model with Ysaurus. I don't see intent as something that's necessary as a data structure. It's something to consider as part of as a moderation practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's important to talk about because it's an important item of the glossary, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to have this discussion whether or not it should be part of the data model. There's a prime example of that. And
one of the
I also don't want it in the data model because I think it's impossible to model.
One of the reasons we're talking about intent here is it gets to the heart of what makes a claim canonical when they're all using the same statement or the same declarative sentences, or however we build up the claim. They're using the same words, and yet we know they're different claims. What is at the heart of that thing that makes one claim different from another and makes each claim unique or canonical, right? And so we tried to use the word intent to define that. And I'm not happy with the word intent for the same reason that Joshua, you just said, you don't see it in the model, is because somebody can drop in out of the blue and look at a claim and they have no idea what the intent was of the emitter, right, of whoever put it there. And they have to interpret it and participate in the debate, right? And so, but you know, interpretation doesn't make something unique. By its nature, interpretation says, oh, people are going to have different interpretations. So, you know, I don't know if it's meaning. I don't know if it's, you know, thought is too granular a term because you're going to want to reuse thought for definitions and for other things.
Or too broad. Thought might be too broad.
Well, by granular, I mean it's a building block of everything. It's not specific to what makes a claim unique, right? And so I'm trying to find the right word for that thing.
I think, Tim, why I opened this, what you're arguing for is that you want to strive towards working towards canonical claims. I see no problem other than that I prefer to also talk about claims that are not canonical, basically. If you keep arguing,
and in that case, I don't know if intent is part of the discussion of the non-canonical claim. Okay,
it is or it isn't.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. If it's not canonical, it's maybe something people are discussing is true or false, but people have different understandings of the thing. In other words, it's an ambivalent. Yeah, right.
And that's why
it's a statement essentially. I don't think there's anything, or I don't see a purpose of anything between statement and canonical claim, unless we're just talking about eventual formality, gradual formality.
Well, the reason why I see that there's a relevance is because the thing that's in between, at least in the glossary, whether we model this or not, we can talk about later, but the reason why I find that it's useful to talk about something in between being claim and a canonical claim, what makes a claim canonical? And that has all to do, what you're basically saying is a claim becomes canonical when we're fairly certain that a lot of people share the same intent when they refer to a given statement. That's what you're trying to strive for.
That's what I call the topic, which is the equivalence class, which is the result of the discursive process. I have a card for that. I have a name for that. And you even agreed, Stephen, that this was the same process.
That might be true. Maybe the vocabulary is a bit more theoretical. We might be fully aligned there. We can still swap terms, but we're trying to build this bottom up rather than...
The problem is you're doing it at the molecule level. I'm doing it in general with the molecules being a special case.
Yeah, but Marc-Antoine, your topic is also things that aren't claims. You have a topic that is not a claim.
As I said, I'm doing it in general. Right. I'm not doing it in specific.
Okay, but so you're saying that a canonical claim is a topic, but you're also saying, but you know, a non-canonical claim is also a topic, is it not?
Correct.
So that's not useful for this discussion.
No, and I agree that we want to discuss what's a canonical claim. But once again, I'm not sure I agree that the non-canonical claim is a topic, by the way, in the sense, and I want to understand better your what you see as a non-canonical claim. Do you mean the canonical
ambiguous? I would call it an ambiguous.
Okay, good, fair enough. And there, yes, I do say it's a topic. Fair enough. I don't. For me, the ambiguity relationship is not an absolute, it's a relative. It's a relationship. We know that a claim is one claim is more canonical than another because we had this ambiguous topic being specializable in those two topics, which are then more canonical than. And you can say that the leaf of this lattice is the canonical claims. You could say that, but until I introduce a new distinction, and then it stopped being canonical. For me, canonicality is a temporary state. It's not an absolute state. It's a relative state. But they're all topics, and what is important is the relationship between them. I spoke of and I said the relationship between statements, which is this process that Joshua introduced, or the negotiation process, right? Introduces equivalence class on the statements, and those are the topics, but that also introduces an equivalence class on the topics, like saying when two topics, one is seen as more specific than another, well, then that says that one is more canonical, more precise than the other. If those topics are the equivalence class of declarative statements and about the world, which is what I mean by claim. A topic, what I call claim is a topic which happens to be the equivalence class of declarative statements about the world. But that's not important. That's not the important word. But I'm doing it from the basic principles of what's a topic. It's the equivalence class. It's the process, the result of the process of negotiations around statements, around any thought. And the equivalence class is what we use as a proxy for the thought. The fact that we can apply it to declarative sentences and hence obtain claims, that's also true. It's a specialization of the generic process of negotiation, which can apply at any level.
So to conclude the meeting, I suggest we try to finalize. Well, we don't have to do it now. I think we need to agree on thought next, as is listed here.
Yeah.
Or intent, or whatever we want to call it, Timothy. And you can argue why not, I guess. I'm not certain either. I guess you can argue that you want to talk about something different, or why you don't agree with the current definitions. Or I don't fully see the problem.
I don't think our definitions are different at this point between our two notions of thought.
No, but I'm worrying about Timothy.
I'm looking for a more specific term than thought, right? I'm looking for, maybe it's meaning is what I'm looking for, right? What we're talking about intent. Intent is something that comes from the emitter.
Have you looked through? Do you agree with the concept, regardless of the name? Do you agree with the?
I think generally I read. That was your statement, or was it intent?
It was what we called intent.
Yeah, okay, it was intent, right? The one thing is, in your example of Max's definition, the first one is incorrectly applied intent. It's like an unfortunate example, but it's worth talking about why it's unfortunate and whether or not it's a good example. Because
can you go back? What do you mean by incorrectly applied intent? What does it mean? Is intent?
Well, no. Okay. So real quick, because I gotta go. The Earth is round, right? So you could make a claim the Earth is round, and what you're trying to say is that the Earth is a sphere. You actually meant it's a sphere, right? You can say the Earth is round, but you actually meant that it's an ellipsoid, all those other ones, right? To say that the Earth is not flat is something that people do in discussions. When we say, the Earth is flat, and you argue against it, say, no, the Earth is round, right? You're not arguing the negation. You're not, what you're doing is, it's not, how do I say, it's not equivalent. It's not the equivalent statement of the Earth is not flat.
I agree.
Which is a negation of the Earth is flat.
It's not a cube either.
And saying the Earth is round. They're not referring to the same thing. The earth is round is referring to a different claim that opposes the claim the earth is flat.
But that's,
right?
that's what exactly what I sign by intent. A very common reason why people say the earth is round, how can these people be so stupid? The general idea they're trying to convey, what is it that the thought that's in their head against flat earth is that the earth is not flat. They're not talking
but could I say then, like, somebody says the earth is flat, and I want to say the earth is not flat, and I say the surface of the earth is curved. I'm not trying to say the earth is not flat. I'm trying to argue the earth is not flat.
That's why it says to emphasize that the earth is not flat. That's the
Right,
thought.
but
Not saying it's saying that the earth is not flat. It's saying to emphasize. That's the thought that's going on.
but if I look at it in terms of modeling or whatever, what you're doing is you're answering the question, what shape is the earth, with an alternative proposal rather
We're
than
not modeling intent here.
You know,
Definition of intent.
the problem is, Tim, is that you're looking at all these sentences, which are actually symbols, and thinking of them as representative of the thought. And it's true that if you look at them as the earth is not flat as a symbol representing the thought, the earth is not flat, it's not equivalent to the earth is round.
right. So what I'm wondering here for the definition of intent is, does it match a definition?
Can we go to my card?
Like you're saying people may say, right? You could say, you know, I may say my shoes are untied when what I'm really trying to say is you haven't been paying attention to me all day and I'm upset, right? And that's my intent. And so that's my problem is with your example, the words do not match what a reasonable person would understand as the intent.
Yeah, but
So
that's
kind of
the whole point.
Can we go to my card, please?
Yeah.
But then I would say to claim that you have been that the person is feeling bad because they've been ignored all day. I would put that there as another example.
Yeah, I'm fine with adding that. That's not against the example.
I made the point in my card that, why did you remove it? That there cannot be an example of thoughts. Because all we're doing is using symbols.
Can I add this one right now? Can you say the example, Timothy? Concretely?
I said to claim that the person is feeling ignored and wants attention.
Someone may say,
it's the exact same thing. The earth is round. No, the earth is round with different intents. And one of the intents is to claim that whatever, someone needs to brush their teeth.
That's very unlikely though, but sure.
It's very unlikely, but it's an argument ad absurdum to show the total disconnect of what they've said with what they were intending. That is why I'm putting it here as an example.
But let's try to find a better example then, right? A real world example where that actually happens. But yes, then I agree. I wouldn't.
Well, I have fights at home all the time where the person saying things is totally opposite what they're intending, what they mean behind the thing.
Okay, that's a very that's actually a useful point.
It's a good example to add here. I'm fully aligned on that. So
I have to go. I'm 7 minutes late to my stand-up, and I'm first, so I gotta go. Sorry to leave right in the middle of this.
So I'm gonna work on mine. I suggest Marc-Antoine, we can see whether we can align them, and then we can see whether or not we need these two right now. I think that's a discussion the two of us can have. I see why you're pointing to them. I think it's a bit premature in the same way that we now in claim also don't need to, or in statement also don't need to. It's progressive formalization, right? We can still always add symbol and point to thought later.
I basically, you believe in cyclic graph being linearized, and I don't.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, for me, ideas make sense as one playing once against the other as a whole.
Yeah,
It's carving out a whole. The idea that you can define a concept independently first, and then the other one above it, and then the other one above it, and then the other one above it, I disbelieve that at a fundamental level. So a lot of our conversation end up being, please define this independently of that. I don't think it's meaningful.
What I'm suggesting is, can you describe symbol to the degree that it's necessary to understand thought in here?
I did. But it refers to thought. They are interdependent. And no, I cannot do it. I cannot do one without referring to the other. Any one of the three, I cannot do it without referring to the other two. If that's a requisite, I'm out. I'm out. Stephen, it is at this level. I'm extremely exhausted by this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I think we're fine referencing a small set of things in pairs if we can, or in a set if we can make the definition and it's something that we need and can move forward on, right? Like I don't think anyone is opposed to that per se. But so which one of the, like I totally understand the thought symbol referent triangle. Which one of those do we need here, right? Like it sounds like we're at least.
I'm saying each of them is meaningless without the other two, and as such,
and I get that. But which one do we need for our purposes right now?
Hence, all
no, which one can we agree on first, knowing that we may have some slight disagreements on the other two words, but we're going to discuss that in future days.
I think it's easier to agree on symbol first and thought second. But
are we here with this triangle because like it seemed to me that you were bringing in thought, right? We're trying to align on this sort of thought intent area, right? Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
That was the original goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So to the extent that we're using intent in some of these conversations, like I understand what I think you mean by thought, but it seems like thought is a broader concept, right? Is thought symbol and reference are sort of the most broad notions, right? Yes. For these categories, right?
Yes.
So is thought even useful here in the sense that what we're colloquially talking about as intent? Like it seems more broad than we need for the purposes of this discussion.
I don't think so, in the sense that I cannot think of a kind of thought that is not relevant to this discussion personally. Can you suggest one? More broad means there's, something that's irrelevant in there. So what would
we already agreed, I think, that declarative sentences are a specific type of symbol, correct?
Yeah.
So in the same vein, I think what Jean just tried to point out, and I agree, is that we might only need to really be specific about the thoughts that point to declarative sentences at this point.
That's one sub case, and yeah, that's the other thing we don't agree on. I mean, we can do it 5 times, or we can do it in general. I'm a mathematician. I want to do it in general. I hate doing repeating work.
Do you understand that it pulls in all of a sudden that we also need to align on all these other terms? Whereas if we only talk about the specifics for now, that can focus the discussion on the specifics, and we can still add the broader terms later.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is all my arguments will be general, because if I'm not able to reuse them, I feel I'm losing my time. But we can focus on declarative sentences about the world, or even declarative sentence as a whole, and the corresponding thoughts. Sure, we could do that. I did agree. I'm not happy about it, but I did agree we can do it specific first. But I'll make the argument in general, and I'll often remind, by the way, this is a general term.
Let's follow so this is the operational definition without this. I'm going to remove it again. That I added because I thought this was the thing we were trying to define, that we needed to define because we're talking about it. Can you give any what is your reason that this is not a useful term? And I think you're saying is, well, intent is only one type of thought.
No, okay. Intent is, there's two different carvings happening here. One is all your examples are declarative statements. And for me,
because we are trying to talk about declarative sentences.
Well, then let's say these are declarative intents. Or declarative. Yeah, that is fine. That's already makes a big difference. Now,
Okay.
the other carving, the other axis of carving is, and this is in the, if you go in the triangle of reference page, not the, yes, below you had it, is there's the thought below, go down. Yes, this. There's the reader, there's the emitter's thought, and that's the intent. And there's the receiver's thought, and that's the interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I would reserve intent for the emitter's thought applied to a quote. And I would use.
But there are, emitters and receivers in a system where you just have shared symbols using your triangle. And
this is where I use the generic thought. And this is, I use thought as the generic and intent as thought when we consider the emitters, and interpretation when we consider the receivers.
So then you would call it declarative thought.
Yep.
Or intent, because it's the intent, well.
And declarative intent in the subcase where we're
Actually,
looking at it from the.
Actually, if you see the definition here, the idea is a person hopes to convey, it would be intent, according to your definition you just said.
Yes, correct.
So this
but I would have declarative thought separately and declarative interpretation separately if we want
need
to.
them in discussions, yes.
Yes. I think it's hair splitting. If we go with the generic, they all fall down from it, but sure, let's.
Well, let's just agree to reserve those words when we need them. And like it feels like at least a modicum of progress was just made there, right?
Mm.
And by the way, Tim proposed meaning. And in my understanding of meaning, and then my understanding of what Tim said, I think it's absolutely equivalent to intent, and I'm happy if we use meaning. The reason I often use concept, the reason I've settled on thought is because there was the reference to the triangle, the same way that we use declarative sentence with an external reference. And so I thought, let's use thought because that's what's in the triangle. But meaning, concept are equivalent to me. And I'm happy to have that even written down. Meaning, concept, they're all. And so, yeah, for me, claim is declarative thought about the world. Yeah, and declarative intent about the world.
Okay. I think that's a perfect ending to a overtime meeting. Can you see whether you like this one, update your one, and then we can probably align on those, and then we just need to check with Timothy, I think.
Yeah, I'll make the distinction. Well, I have made the distinctions, by the way, in thought, but I'll make it a bit more explicit how thought carves out into intent and intent and interpretation. I have put it, actually, I made a small modification there. And then we'll speak about declarative intent as a specific
I still
case.
think you can do that in one card. I don't think, because
and that's I will die on that hill.
No. You can mention thought and intent and all these things in one card, but there's no point to. We're trying to align on the whole right now. The concept we're trying to align on is declarative intent. I don't think there's a need to agree. You can refer to the triangle and all that stuff to explain that this is declarative intent as seen in this triangular framework, whatever, but there's no point to split it up right now because we haven't had a need to talk about them yet. We can split it up if the need arises.
Well, I think that where it's interesting is that there's only intent for quotes, right? It's a symbol in context as opposed to symbol decontextualized symbol. And that's whereas I think interpretation can be applied to both quotes and decontextualized symbols.
That might be true, but we're talking about declarative sentences, right?
Yeah, the declarative sentence, and that is a question for you. Is it considered contextualized, decontextualized, or both? Because for me, symbol is both.
Decontextualized.
What?
Decontextualized.
Then that should be part of the definition. You should make it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, it just only points to the sentence, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because that wasn't clear. Let's make that clear. Because yeah, for me, there's this clear carving out of symbols into contextualized and decontextualized. I say abstract, I will say decontextualized because it's an operation. And I want to make it clear that decontextualization is an operation.
Then we should add contextualizing to the glossary as well. The point is you're using a lot of words, you're coming in with a whole load of good ideas, but in order to talk about them, we need to be aligned. We need to be talking about the same thing. And that's the tricky part here. And the best way to do it is not just by saying, here, read these 10 books and then we can talk. It's about finding the essential bits where we know we're already aligned on. And that's what we're trying to do. And I have nothing against the importance of symbol and all that stuff. I have something about enforcing that we need to talk about that now. There's no real need to do it given the current use case.
The current use case. And let's, Joshua introduced it, and I think it was very useful. He said, people make a statement, and then it's like, do you mean this? Oh, actually, I mean this. They go from statement to statement. That's the real use case. But I'm saying to explain how to treat that. How to treat that is with an equivalence class.
That's why we're all here for. But right now, we're just trying to agree on what a statement is and what they go from to something else. Do we call it a statement or not, etc.? Do we call it?
And I'm saying to understand that, you need to understand how the statement is not the thought behind it, and what do we do given that we cannot have access to the thought? We need to have a proxy for the thought. That's a topic.
Which is why we're defining this right now. That's
why
we started.
Which is why I had to introduce the triangle.
Yeah. So introduce the triangle in your definition here, and then
I did.
Okay, I need to go and eat.
Okay.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks for the discussion. Don't get too upset, Marc-Antoine.
I was on the edge. I was really wondering, is this helping me in any way at this point? I have my doubts. Are we going forward?
Process for everyone.
What?
It's a slow and painful process for everyone.
It is. It is.
But it's the only way to find alignment.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye.
See you next time.
See you.